We start the housekeeping.
Thank you for participating in today's meeting. If attending in person, please do not connect to Zoom or teleconference while in the room, and please silence all devices. If translation is provided, click on the globe at the bottom of your screen to select either English or Spanish. Public comment will be taken after each item. If you're in the auditorium and wish to comment, please use the iPads located in the lobby or complete a blue speaker card as available. If you need assistance, please find a South Coast AQMD employee. Speakers may be limited to a total of 3 minutes or less for all agenda items. Times may be shortened to ensure all speakers can be heard. A countdown timer will be displayed on the screen for each public comment. More time will be allotted for Spanish translation that is not simultaneous. For questions or issues on making a public comment, please call the public advisor at 909-396-2432. That's 909-396-2432. Please adhere to the speaker time limit and treat others with courtesy, civility, and respect. Failure to do so can result in your mic being muted or you being removed from the meeting. Be aware that this meeting is being recorded. By participating, you authorize recording of audio and visual content presented during the live event and consent to subsequent use of the recording in the public domain by South Coast AQMD.
Good morning. Call to order the Stationary Source Committee meeting for January and ask for roll call.
Good morning. Council Member Cacciari.
Here.
Thank you. Senator Delgado.
I'm here.
Thank you. Supervisor Mitchell.
Present.
Thank you. Supervisor Hagman. Here. Thank you. Board Member Padilla Campos.
Good morning.
Good morning. Chair McCallum.
Here.
We have a quorum.
Thank you very much. We'll go on to our informational item, an update on Rule 1180 presented by Heather Farr, Planning and Rules Manager. Heather, you're on.
Hi, good morning, Chair McCallum, members of the committee. I am here to present on Rule 1180. This is our fence line monitoring rule for petroleum refineries and related facilities. Next slide, please. By way of background, this rule was adopted in 2017. We did do an amendment last year to expand some of the requirements. Really, the key provisions for this rule is to require a fence line monitoring around petroleum refineries and related facilities. The idea is you'll have a monitor right on the fence line. So if a pollutant crossed over it at an elevated level, it would give an opportunity to have a notification to the community. The facilities are also required to fund community monitors. So we also have monitors in the community. The facilities are required to develop websites that have all this information in real time and historical. The public can sign up for notifications. We also have provisions for the facilities to take action if they do have pollutants that are detected at an elevated level. In the last amendment, we did expand the rule to apply to other related facilities. We brought in 2 hydrogen plants, a sulfur recovery plant, and a large tank terminal, but we also included an exemption for some smaller tank terminals. So the board requested that we come back for an update to talk about those exempt facilities, just to ensure their emissions are still low. Next slide, please. So the exemption applies to tank terminals with a capacity less than 310,000 barrels. This small terminal exemption was added to address these terminals with low emissions. These facilities are also located adjacent to the petroleum refineries, so their operations are right near existing fence line monitors. And there's a map in a couple of slides where you can see just how close these facilities are to those monitors. In addition, even though they're exempted from the fence line monitoring requirements, there are other requirements that requires them to detect and repair any leaks that may be present. And the exemption applied to 3 terminals. One is a liquid petroleum gas, Rancho LPG Holdings, and there's also 2 terminals that are operated by Tesoro, or the Marathon Petroleum Facility. Next slide, please. Just wanted to talk a little bit about the existing rules that do apply to these tank terminals. We have 2 rules that apply to the tanks themselves. That's Rule 463 and 1178. And then we also have 1173, which is not for the tank itself, but for like flanges and valves that requires them to do leak detection on those parts as well. And these rules have all been amended recently to put in enhanced monitoring. They all have optical gas imaging requirements that are either in place now or upcoming, and it requires these facilities to really, it's a great tool to monitor the entire facility, to find large leaks, or even to monitor individual components, to find smaller leaks. It's really been a very successful way for us to get VOC reductions going forward. Next slide, please. So then just some of the observations we've had on these facilities. We have not had any of these adjacent monitors pick up any pollutants that can be attributed to these exempt facilities. There's also been no public complaints or any air violations. We did have one facility that had an administrative infraction, but that's been resolved now. So really basically due to the proximity of these facilities to those existing fence line monitoring, as well as the other leak detection requirements, we do think that these facilities should remain exempt. Next slide. Just a quick overview of these three facilities, just shows their total capacity. They're all below that 310 threshold. We're also listing what the VOC emissions are from these facilities. That first one, these are 2023 emissions. That first one was not in the reporting cycle for 2023, so that represents their 2022 emissions. You can see they're all quite low, and we haven't received public complaints on these facilities. Next slide, please. This slide shows a map. This is showing Rancho LPG holding. The map all the way on the right can just show like the relative size of the facility compared to the petroleum refinery. And then we kind of zoomed in so you can see where those existing fence line monitoring facilities are. They're right on the fence line of that facility. In the zoomed out map, you can see the community monitor as well is pretty nearby. And again, no pollutants have been measured on those existing monitors that are attributed to Rancho. Next slide, please. These are our other two, these Tesoro, Carson, and Wilmington terminals. Again, on that map that is zoomed out, you can just see how small those facilities are compared to the petroleum refinery themselves. You can also see how close they are to those existing fence lines. We kind of zoom in there and you can see the nearest fence line monitor to that facility. And again, there have been no pollutants detected on those monitors attributed to those facilities. Next slide, please. So as far as staff recommendations, we do recommend to maintain the existing exemption for those small tank terminals. Their emissions continue to be low. They are adjacent to existing real-time monitors. They have enhanced leak detection for the other rules that apply to them. And again, no public complaints or air violations. With that, I'll take any questions.
Thank you, Heather, for the update on the small ones that were exempt. Appreciate the hard work there. Any comments, questions from committee members?
Mr. Chair?
Yes, go ahead, Supervisor.
Thank you, and good morning and happy Friday to everybody. Just looking at the Tesoro Logistics Carson Production Terminal, it's listed in the notices of violation from the written report. Can staff comment on the nature of that violation for me at all?
Sure, I can comment on that. That facility had an infraction. They were supposed to do source tests on a thermal oxidizer, because they were transferring materials that were pretty volatile. They changed their operation and now they're transferring jet fuel, has very low vapor pressure. It doesn't require that incinerator to be in operation, but they were supposed to do a source test once every 5 years while transferring gasoline. Now that they switched over, they didn't do that source test because they weren't transferring gasoline. So they just hadn't notified us that they had changed their operation so that source test wasn't required.
Excellent, helpful. Thank you very much. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Any other comments or questions? Seeing none, is there any public comment? If there is, please raise your hand. I see one. Who is that?
I see Moses Huerta, Larry. Moses Huerta. Moses, go ahead, please.
Thank you, Chair. Good morning, everybody. Just a quick comment in the information, if it would be possible to get a little more clarification on the monitoring. Was the monitoring done during a 24-hour schedule, or was it during a sampling schedule? Say every 3 days, every 6 days, as an example. Just to understand better on saying if there were no issues with the monitoring, just to understand a bit of that, if that possible would be clarification. That's all I have on the comment. Thank you. Yield back my time. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Have no other speakers. Would staff like to respond to the question?
Sure. So the monitoring that Heather was referring to is the monitoring that already again exists at those adjacent facilities, at those refineries. There is a set schedule by which those are continuously being monitored, and that data is again available and posted and what have you. And I think it's about every like 15-minute time frame.
Very good. Any other comments from the committee? Seeing none, we'll move on to, this is a receive and file or no motion required. So we'll move on to our written reports. I would like to comment on the monthly permitting enhancement program update, if I might. First of all, I think the report is pretty good. Shows we're making some progress, but call your attention to the graphic on the third page or on the second page, which has pending apps, 605 awaiting pre-screening, and then 528 incoming apps. Does the 605 include that 508, or are those additional?
Thank you, Mayor. The 605 is what's already in our system.
It says there's 528 incoming apps. They're not included in that 605.
They would not be included in that 605.
So there's really a total of 11 something waiting pre-screening.
Correct. The awaiting pre-screening is when we receive the application files in the door, they will get assigned to an engineer. So the 605 are with engineers. Those will move into the other categories, and then the incoming apps will then move into the pre-screening. So it's very fluid. I
like the illustration. I would make one suggestion that you have one that compares it to the previous month or the previous quarter, whatever, so that we can see, at least me, visually, what the progress is or non-progress is, and how these various things change. That would be very helpful.
We can add that, Mayor, and we actually already have a working draft of that internally that we can add in.
Okay, I appreciate that. It would be very helpful for the report. Is there any need to talk about any of the other written reports? Go ahead.
Mr. Chair, Larry, I just have one on following up on your comments.
Uh-huh.
And I like that diagram, Jason. Helps a lot. The table right below it, I read through this report. I always knew we had a lot kind of pending, but it really jumps out at you when you look at that table 1 and you go down waiting action, you go down a third column, the third 1, 2, 3, completion of construction. And you look out of those 1,749, 2/3, 1,107. What I understand is, just if I've had this correctly, you're getting ready to issue the permit, you're going through the process, you're just waiting for that facility or somebody to start the construction or complete it, right?
Correct. So at that point, staff has issued a permit to construct. It is in the facilities court to build, potentially test it before we finalize the file with the final permit to operate.
And most of those, just generally, they average a couple months, couple years. I know some are very complicated, so some good.
It can be several months. I think recently, everyone's heard of supply chain issues. So those get extended. The permits to construct have a life of a year, 1 year. Facilities can ask for an extension, but we do have many multi-year projects that may reside in this category for quite some time as facilities build out their operations.
And finally, I was looking at, later in the report, you talked about vacancy rate, and we're down to 10%. But every week, as Wayne comes out of his weekly report, I know we have a lot coming in. We're kind of chipping away, but it's just basically chipping away at a couple. Is there any way to get even higher, a few more? I know the chair, Delgado, this is a great effort, but you guys are really chipping away, but it's tough to get this monster down. So can you hire more? Is it possible?
Absolutely. I think Mike-
Let me interject. So there's two things that we look at. We look at the vacancy rate, and I want to say we're at about 12.9 from an FTE perspective, which is what the budgetary goal was. But another number that we look at that you generally don't see is the dollar number. And so we're right on target for the FTE, but we're low on the budget. And so we're watching budget really closely. And it's very difficult at this point to bring on more people given the budget that we face. And then we're even more concerned about budget given the slate of executive orders that came out and what that might mean. And we will do a separate briefing for the board on the potential impacts of those executive orders on us. And we'll do that in closed session at another time in the near future, not today or anything like that.
You know,
And
I know-
engineering's vacancy is actually less than the overall. So we prioritized engineering. We still want to prioritize engineering, but I'm just saying we're watching it very closely.
I figured you're balancing a lot. I know you're making, I look at your weekly, Wayne, and I see this, and I see you're chipping away, just chipping away slowly as you're trying to balance the budget. I figured that full FTEs, and I knew the number. I knew there was a reason you're doing that.
Yeah.
And I also saw where you reorganized to try to, the section, so really appreciative of it. I know you're under incredible stress, so we're seeing the progress. I just wish you'd get more resource, and now I understand why.
Yeah, and just to add to that point, we are looking at another recruitment. So we are trying to be ready to do exactly bring in more people. It's a very delicate massaging, managing of our budget and our resources right now.
Thank you for the
And to,
comment.
to clarify, what Wayne was referring to with respect to closed session is we're looking at possible legal actions that we could take with respect to recent actions. And so that's what would be discussed in closed session.
Thank you, Bay.
Thank you. Chair Delgado.
Yes, great questions. And I mean, for me, I think we still might need like a little boost of maybe some of our recently retired staff or helping to work on the caseload. And I'd be willing to consider that as part of our annual budget process if it's something that is a concern. But I thank you, Jason, for all your hard work on this. And I just want to continue to maybe make a dent on this. And if it means temporary staffing with our recently retired staff, I'm very supportive of that.
We appreciate that, Chair. And we're in discussions with SB Sarah on that very matter. So appreciate it.
Very good. Any other comments or questions on this number 3 or the other two items? Yes. Go ahead.
So Joe, I'll open this up. Wayne, is there anything we could be doing our part? I see that the state and county and cities have waived some regulatory tape for the cleanup and stuff. I don't know, any of this stuff has to do with us, but maybe to look at that in the future, bring it back. Is there things we could be doing for the cleanup efforts throughout our region now?
So thank you, Supervisor. As the fires hit, one of the first things that we did was look at what are the permitting requirements and what are the potential things that we can do to make sure that all efforts are being adequately resourced and that we're not in any way hindering any of those responses. And so one of the first things that we did was issue an executive order that allowed for the continued use of emergency generators above the allotted time. We continue to look at that. There are other instances that we look at. We look at a variety of factors when we issue the emergency order, and there are some issues that we may not necessarily have to issue an emergency order. We can do a variance through the hearing board, or in fact, we can take enforcement discretion. We're looking at a whole slate of those efforts in regards to the ongoing recovery and response efforts. We're continuing to evaluate those and what our role is. with regards to, in particular, some of the concerns on reconstruction, Terrence and his team are working very closely to make sure that people are aware of the requirements, particularly as they relate to asbestos. One of the big concerns that we have is that as a lot of the reconstruction takes place and a lot of efforts are being made to move into the fire impacted areas, that we coordinate closely with EPA, with FEMA, with Army Corps of Engineers through the Unified Command. And those are things that we're doing right now.
Very supportive of all that. I do think that the board, just as a procedural, you could take certain actions as the ED, but it needs probably, at least I do on the county, the other things, we ratify those actions at a later time to give you more that cover. So maybe that goes to a different board later, but
We can certainly look at that, and I very much appreciate the board's support on those efforts. I'm always comforted by knowing that the board is very supportive of our ongoing recovery response activities. So I very much appreciate that.
thank you.
Seeing no other comments from the committee, is there any public? One more. Okay.
Sorry, Larry, just want to go on number 5, just following up on Supervisor Mitchell's question on the settlement, maybe for let's see. Out of all those, there's probably 16 or 17, and I see it's a rule violation for Circle K, a lot of the gas stations, 461. I guess if you can just, I know it's gasoline dispensing and a transfer. If you can just explain I know they're probably different things, but is that when there's a problem with the dispensing of the gasoline you're putting in your car, or is it when the large trucks come in? What is that? And there's different fines.
Rule 461 is very broad, and it deals with various aspects, of gasoline vapor recovery, that kind of a thing. So it's a little hard to address all of them, but it could be oftentimes it can be issues with equipment. Post-pandemic, we've really made an effort to be out there, looking at these stations, these facilities, and so it could be torn hoses. It could be, something is not being recorded properly. We're also going, basically defective equipment. We're also going out in the field and watching performance tests and other things that are required of service stations. And so sometimes you see these Rule 461 violations for a Circle K, these service stations that we're familiar with. Sometimes those violations are at bigger facilities because they have their own gasoline dispensing operations. Things are installed improperly. I mean, there's just a big list. We could bring my staff in and they could go all through them. But the bottom line is this is a result of our efforts in the field, putting eyes, often hands on equipment, and making sure they follow air quality rules and regulations.
Terrence, I appreciate that. I look at these and I know when I've gone to gas stations before, usually it's fine, but sometimes the smell is just saying there must be a hose or something broken, and it's horrendous. So I really appreciate you doing it. If anybody does, you just give a call. Who would you call if I'm at a gas station and one of our residents goes, boy, it's really bad here at the gas station?
I'd call 1-800-CUT-SMOG.
Okay.
But I think a lot of the gas stations have a notice about using your cell phone close to the dispensing areas, so I might move a little bit away from that before I make the call.
Thanks, Ben. Thank you, Tor.
It's not a myth. You really shouldn't use it. No, I'm asking.
Is there what's the reasoning? Just curious. Besides pollution and
For not using the cell phone?
yeah.
I don't know for certain, but I think it's related to possibly sparks or causing an issue with the vapor in the area. So I think it's an explosive risk.
Okay. Thanks, Larry.
I just wanted to also note that our contact information is actually on a sticker that's located on the dispenser. So if someone has a problem, they can see right on the dispenser a number to call us, the complaint line. Jason, do you want to add to that?
From a distance.
Yeah, just
Yeah,
don't-
I'll just add, it is a requirement of our Rule 461 that the number has to be on the dispenser, the interface that you see. You will see some sticker. Actually, if you don't see the sticker, you can call in and complain. But again, that's 1-800-CUT-SMOG.
And that's right. My staff is telling me not having that sticker is one of the violations you may be seeing. So it's all regulated.
Just back away from the pump before you make the call. Okay, is there any public comment on the items 3, 4, and 5, which are written reports on the agenda?
I do have guests here in my office, so I'm gonna let them come in.
Good morning, David Rothbart representing Clean Water SoCal. I want to thank the board and staff for working on the permit streamlining issue. I think the group has done a very good job brainstorming on how to reduce the backlog. And we have a lot of good ideas on the table, but at least in my opinion, I think there is a staffing issue probably at the higher levels as far as you can have the pyramid of the approval process within South Coast, and there may be a bottleneck at that higher level. So I'd encourage staff to take a look at that and see how we can make sure permits are not slowed down in the processing. Right now, I asked my members whether they've seen any increase in the processing speed for permits. And I regret to inform everybody that we're not seeing permits flowing any faster. It still takes many, many years to get a permit issued. And that's very problematic for essential services like the folks that I represent. We do need to build infrastructure quickly, and it's very hard to wait any longer than we have to. So I really appreciate that thought process. And also something else to think about is the rules that we're generating right now are very, very complicated and can inadvertently slow down the permitting process. So I'd really recommend looking at new rules and existing rules to see if there's any way we could streamline that process to alleviate the backlog as well. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Dave.
Thank you for your comments. Anybody else in the public wish to speak on those items? Seeing none, we'll move on then to other matters. Is there any other business we need to talk about this committee? Seeing none, we'll go on to general public comment for items not on the agenda, but under the purview of this committee. Is there any?
I do have somebody here who wishes to speak. I'll let them come in.
Okay.
Good morning, Chair and members of the committee. My name is Dory Chandler. I'm a policy advocate with the Coalition for Clean Air, and I'm commenting on rules 1111 and 1121. Recently, my spouse and I replaced our broken AC gas heater with a heat pump system. We used a reputable company that had good service warranty. Replacement was easy. The company we used was extremely capable and handled any issues well. In fact, my comments today are printed double-sided on my permit for the HERS verification. The unit was slightly more expensive than a replacement gas unit, but we felt the efficiency and benefits of a heat pump system were worth it. I understand the argument about making sure that low-income residents can afford to pay for these systems. With AQMD regulations 1111 and 1121 and correlated assistance to low-income families, the prices will be comparable to gas unit systems. Over 15 years ago, when I lived overseas, we used heat pump systems because that was what was available. This is not a new technology. This is a proven technology, and the technology is easily available. It is clear this transition is both better for the economy and for clean air. Methane gas burning equipment in residential and commercial buildings in the South Coast Air Basin are responsible for 130 premature deaths per year, 76,000 asthma attacks per year, 30,000 lost school days, and annual health impacts valued at $2 billion. Building decarbonization is key to the success of the air quality management plan. And while no single rule will get us into attainment, each component is an important step towards clean air. Rules 1111 and 1121 have long been ready. Despite staff having made many changes to accommodate, opponents continue to attack these proposals. Any further delays will only undermine the district's efforts to reach attainment of air quality standards. We continue to support these rules and urge the board to approve them in May. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. Any other?
One more speaker here.
Okay, very good.
It's an action-packed day here.
No, wait for me. Thank you. Good morning, Chair McCallum and members of the committee. My name is Fernando Gaitan. I'm with Earth Justice. I'm here today also to urge you and the committee to stay the course for getting zero NOx standards through rules 1111, 1121. The proposed rules represent a culmination of over 15 months of rigorous stakeholder engagement, compromise, and careful planning. These rules are not just necessary, they're ready to go. This region has yet to meet a single federal ozone standard, and the public health consequences of unhealthful air that this causes are well documented. We are going now into the third year since the adoption of the 2022 Air Quality Management Plan, which laid out a clear path towards achieving zero NOx reductions or NOx reductions required to meet federal ozone standards. It's stated unequivocally that extensive use of zero emissions technologies is the only way, the only path forward. And this board knew then what it knows now, that without bold action like adoption of these rules, we cannot deliver on the region's clean air promise. Passing these rules will be transformative. It will send strong market signals that accelerates innovation, expands supply, and reduces cost, making zero emissions technologies more affordable for everyone. The sooner these rules pass, the sooner we'll get to these benefits, and delays only perpetuate the use of polluting technologies, which lock in harmful emissions for decades. We share the board's understanding that these rules will only succeed if there's ample support for them, especially for under-resourced communities. That's why programs like the Go Zero program already provide critical financial incentives, and we strongly support efforts to expand these incentives to ensure that an equitable transition. As the board considers these critical rules, I urge you to also support the executive officer's stated commitment to a 5-fold increase to the Go Zero program, or to $100 million. Scaling up funding will only bolster equity. It would also enhance the success of these rules by accelerating adoption and development of clean technologies. It also sends a powerful message that the board is serious about making this transition accessible to all, and delivering on its commitment to cleaner air for every resident. The most powerful step you can make today to make these technologies affordable, however, is to pass these rules. Market certainty will drive down costs faster than any incentive program you could ever find. We urge you to pass these rules in May and no later than May. Thank you.
Thank you, Fernando, for your comments. Any other comments on TV land?
No more here.
Anyone in the audience here? You have one?
Chair, we have one comment in the auditorium. Nick Wilson.
Nick, go ahead.
Is this working? Okay. Good morning, board. My name is Nick Wilson, and I respect that most of us in this room have varying differences in terms of political beliefs with varying degrees, but I really strongly oppose this proposed water heater mandate. This is, I believe, one of the most out-of-touch policies I've ever seen. Replacing a single unit costs between $6,000 and $20,000. This is a crushing blow to homeowners, landlords, and small businesses, and school districts. School districts will not be reimbursed by the state because this is not a state law. This is a local rule. Small businesses will be hit even harder, facing costs between $300,000 and $800,000. Every industry, resident, and business owner will be affected by this. This is driving up costs for everyone. This is yet another excuse to fine and tax businesses and homeowners into submission for noncompliance with extreme policies that will continue to bankrupt Californians who are struggling right now with the increased cost of living and inflation. This is not about climate. In my belief, this is about control. Our state's residents are being used right now as guinea pigs for these policies that will devastate businesses with the raise in the cost for living and strip away personal freedom. Beyond the financial burden, this mandate increases rent and construction costs by requiring individual water heaters instead of central boilers, adding ongoing maintenance expenses, straining electrical systems. Older buildings will need costly electrical upgrades, placing even more financial strain on property owners. This is going to monopolize the market, requiring additional trades and venting, potentially compromising multifamily housing structures. The ripple effects of what this policy does will impact so many thousands of Californians right now who have lost hope in this state because of its fiscal mismanagement. Every single industry expert I have spoken to believes that this is one of the worst ideas that they've ever encountered. And cities across California right now that this is going to impact are actively opposing it by resolution, city after city, because their constituents overwhelmingly reject it. Unlike some who I've heard who seem to be bureaucrats or external driving forces, either in this room or on Zoom, who are sidestepping the legislative process to force this mandate through. So I'm asking you to please do the right thing and end this mandate. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments, Mr. Wilson. That's the only one we have in-house. We'll now go to online, and I'll ask Cacciati to follow the line.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. First speaker looks like M. Laras, M-L-A-R-A-S. Go ahead, please. You got 3 minutes.
Hi, good afternoon, or morning, I should say. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Hi, good morning, board members and community members. My name is Myra, and I'm here speaking today as a concerned taxpayer in your region. I am concerned by the lack of transparency from Southern California Air Quality Management District on rules 1111 and 1112. I'm working diligently along with many community members in your region to educate other taxpayers in our region of this possible change of rules 1111 and 1112. We know now, and we are letting all of Southern California AQMD taxpayers know of these changes. We don't need more hot air from special interest groups. We need data and evidence supporting this decision. I don't want to see it on a flyer. I want to see it on a billboard, something, display it. Don't just put it on a flyer that you're passing out. Show us the data and evidence of the dangers before moving forward. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. Next is Deborah
Cam, Deborah Cam.
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes, thank you. My name is Deborah Cam. I live in Orange County, and I want to thank Supervisor Don Wagner for his article in the Orange County Register. This was the very first notice that residents and businesses and school districts have received, despite one of the previous speakers saying that there has been stakeholder engagement. The vast majority of residents and businesses throughout this area have no idea about these rules that are going to impact them greatly. I'm very concerned that this has been done underground and without notice to people who it's going to affect. For example, school districts and county offices of education will be affected. And because this is not a state mandate, they will not be eligible for reimbursement through the state. The California Constitution only allows reimbursement for these costs if it is done as a state mandate. We already have school districts that have budget problems. They're already announcing potential layoffs of teachers. And each one of these school sites will have to convert and costing tens of thousands of dollars, if not hundreds of thousands of dollars per school district or county office of education. I'm very concerned about educational programs having to be cut due to all of these costs and expenses, as well as teacher layoffs. This was not well thought out. The school districts have not been notified. Businesses in Orange County do not know about this either. And residents have no idea about this mandatory these mandatory rules. The previous speakers and I read, even with these mandates, the goal will not be achieved. So this is absolutely ridiculous to impose all of this burden on residents, especially. This is the worst possible timing with the LA fires, where we already have problems with the electric grid, and you want to put additional strain on the electrical grid and increase costs for everyone throughout this area. I really, really implore this body and the AQMD to rethink this. This cannot possibly be mandatory. This will bankrupt businesses. This will harm the school districts. This will end in teacher layoffs. This will end in evictions and and problems with low-income renters and homeowners. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments.
Next speaker is Pete Marsh from Long Beach. Pete, go ahead, please.
Good morning, Chair McCallum and board members and staff. My name is Pete Marsh in Long Beach. Thanks for the opportunity to engage. I strongly support Rules 1111 and 1121 and would like to just point out two reasons why. First, at the macro level, these rules will help improve air quality. One of the largest improvements in air quality in 3 decades in the South Coast Air Basin. We've made great progress over many decades, and we can see it in the fact that we can see mountains now that we couldn't see 20, 30, 40 years ago. But we need to continue the progress, and these rules will be one of the greatest reductions in emissions of NOx and other criteria pollutants in that time frame. And in terms of affordability, like Ms. Chandler, who spoke earlier, I replaced a gas furnace with a heat pump about 3 years ago. I had quotes for a 1,600 square foot house. I had quotes from $7,000 up to $15,000 for a range of different heat pump models. The lower cost ones were for single stage, the basic technology. I chose to spend about $13,000 on the heat pump to get the variable speed and essentially a little greater stability and comfort. And we also spent another $2,000 to replace the ducts in our house because they were a little older. We were concerned that there might have been rodent infestation, et cetera. We felt it a good investment to spend that extra money, but that wasn't required strictly for the heat pump itself. So that was a little more than a gas furnace would have been. We had a gas furnace that failed, and I had about a 6-year-old air conditioner unit, and replacing the 2 of those when the air conditioner also failed, the combined total would have been in the $9,000 or $10,000 range. So the cost was comparable, a little bit more for the heat pump. My timing was a little off. We did this about 6 months before the Inflation Reduction Act passed, so I wasn't eligible for any of the tax credits there. But if I had been, I would have received a $2,000 incentive there, in addition to the other incentives available from Tech Clean California, et cetera. So strong support for the rule, and it was very affordable. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker is Jessica Martinez.
Good morning. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Good morning, board members and staff and community members. My name is Jessica Martinez, and I am currently serving as a trustee board member on the Altaloma School District Board. And I would like to speak today on behalf of a single board member, myself, regarding the water heater mandate. I asked our superintendent if she was aware of this mandate. And she was going to look into it because she had not heard of it. And so I think that there's a lack of transparency in ensuring that the entities that will be affected are aware of this mandate. Currently, the majority of the school districts are in declining enrollment. I know our school district in Altaloma, we're experiencing declining enrollment, and we have to do budget cuts in order to continue educating our students. And I believe that this mandate will bankrupt our district. We have to ensure the safety of our students, and I don't think that this mandate will be able to do this because we will lack a reliable source of power. Right now with the Edison cut our power for several days, and I know everything was running on electric. It we wouldn't even have hot water, you know. And so I think that it's important, one, that there's greater transparency to ensure that the entities that will be affected are aware of this mandate. And I would ask board members to consider opposing this mandate. In Altaloma, taxpayers are not in a position to have to comply with new mandates. The previous speaker mentioned his combined total was $9,000. I would disagree with that. And I would like to know who his contractor is, you know, because recently we changed our AC unit in a 1,200 square foot home, and it was over $20,000. And so it will be a burden to taxpayers, to property owners. And so I plead today that the board really considers opposing this mandate. Thank you.
Thank you, Jessica. Last two speakers, we have Adrian Martinez. Adrian, go ahead, please.
Good morning. My name is Adrian Martinez. Here to testify in public comment. I just wanted to raise a couple issues. There was a lot of discussion today about the process of the rulemaking for 1111 and 1121. As someone who's kind of sat through a lot of the working group meetings, received a lot of the notices, there's been a lot of discussion on this. So, you know, I know that staff is doing a lot more outreach, but I just want to, you know, indicate I participate in a lot of agencies across the state that do a lot of work. And I think this outreach has been more than many other agencies do for equally important topics like this. The other thing I want to just discuss is there was a lot of discussion from prior speakers about what's this about, some claims that this is about climate or this is about control. And I look at this, I think this is about one thing. It's about air quality. I was looking in Appendix 3 of the 2022 Air Quality Management Plan, which many of you adopted in 2022. And I was looking at the emissions inventory. And I was looking at light duty automobiles in 2026. So that's all the millions of passenger vehicles that are in the region. That is 10.3 tons per day of nitrogen oxide pollution. That's millions and millions of vehicles. This rule, when implemented, will reduce approximately the exact same amount of pollution. This is the single most important air quality reduction measure that the agency has pursued in the last 3 decades. And I think this rule, if adopted, will reduce more emissions than any other regulatory package that the Air District will ever adopt. Because I think the sources of pollution under the control of the Air District, you don't see sources that give you potentially 10 tons per day. The consequences are huge. We have the most ozone polluted region in the country. We have communities all across the basin that are breathing dirty air for large parts of the summer and breathing dirty air in the winter when the fine particulates are kicking up. We need this measure to reduce pollution and put us on a path to attain state and federal air quality standards. And Earth Justice and our partners will be there all along the way through the, you know, tons more hearings, workshops, and working group meetings to participate and testify on exactly how important this rule is. And we encourage the board to adopt this rule in May at the latest. Thank you.
Thanks, Adrian. We've got somebody else just raise their hand. So we've got 2 more speakers. Next one is Maria Isabel Arias. Maria, go ahead, please.
Morning, everyone. My name is Maria Isabel Arias. I'm a local parent, advocate, and resident in the Inland Empire. I am here to speak in regards to the water heater mandate. I understand that there's a need to clean our air. I understand there is a need of making things better for our community. However, we need to also understand how is this going to impact financially the people that are low income, the people that are not able to fund major repairs. I am talking about um, our community that are not able to pay for these changes that are going to be mandated. So I'm just speaking on behalf of those that will be in financial hardship if this is passed. I myself know many, many people, and I also want to speak on the fact that this has not been advertised as it should have. I have not seen ads on the TV. I have not seen ads on any of the media. I have not heard of it at our city council meetings or district meetings. And to me, that's alarming because you're making a decision without community input, or at least not enough. So I would like to request today for you members to please hold back and don't be animate to push this until you get the opinion of the majority, and especially those that will be impacted by these water heater mandate. I myself, to speak for my family, I will not be able to afford to make this change because we are in a fixed income, we're a large family, and I have special needs children and an elderly to take care of. So this is going to impact a lot of people that will have financial hardship. So please do consider those when making choices for the greater California. Thank you.
Thank you, Maria. Our final speaker with his hand raised is Jed Holtzman. Jed, go ahead, please.
Thank you so much, Chair McCallan and committee members, for the extra time. My name is Jed Holtzman from RMI. Really want to thank everyone for speaking today. And I was moved to speak by the person who called for data. So I'm going to try to present some and happy to provide these citations if they would like to reach out to me. Jed Holtzman at RMI. The health protective standards contained in these rules will deliver the greatest emissions reductions of any air quality regulation the agency has issued in more than 3 decades. The amount of pollution that is coming from these sources surpasses the NOx pollution from passenger vehicles in the region. So this would be beyond phasing out all passenger vehicles while somehow still maintaining transportation. Because as we know, the heat pumps that provide both heating and cooling and that have already outsold gas furnaces in the United States for the last 2 years actually perform better than existing equipment. And so it would be an improvement. As you likely know by now, the building equipment that we're talking about in your residential and commercial buildings emits more NOx pollution than the region's oil and gas production, refining, cement manufacturing, and power generation combined, and over 3 times more PM 2.5 than the region's power plants. This is all standard EPA data. EPA's COBRA model demonstrates that this pollution is responsible for approximately 76,000 asthma attacks per year, 30,000 lost school days, and 130 premature deaths each year, with annual health impacts valued at $2 billion lost to households every year. That is $2 billion lost to households in the economy each year from this pollution. And the costs of the health burden borne by the residents of the region, including individual homeowners and those on fixed incomes, are an affordability concern that this agency and this committee must take seriously. We cannot continue to afford the status quo of death and chronic illness. These devices are going to operate for 15 to 25 years, and so the very slow and gradual phase-in that is proposed by staff is still going to have these devices operating into the 2050s, so there's no more time to delay this transition. Staff has already introduced a raft of alternative compliance measures, exemptions, and other flexibility that have been added based on industry and community requests, most of them after the end of the year-long public engagement working group process was already complete. Compliance dates presented at earlier meetings have already been pushed back to 2030 and 2035 for edge cases. The time to implement the 2022 Air Quality Management Plan is now. Funding is available at every level, from federal to state to utility to local, and now the South Coast District itself. And the analysis has shown this is cost-effective.
Thank you, Jed. That completes our public comment on this item, on the public, general public comment. Wayne, would you provide an update on what we're doing with our public outreach and what we plan to do?
So as you know, we continue to engage with the COGS and with the Association of Governments. We've developed a flyer. The flyer really was intended to do a couple of things. One was to provide a means to get further information and to raise awareness. We've been distributing those to the cities, to the COGS, and asking them to distribute it to the cities' representatives, to the homeowners, and to the apartment associations. We've gotten numerous requests to provide comment and to describe the rule itself. And so we're doing that throughout the region. I would say that staff has also reached out on a limited fashion through some of the social media aspects that we have. You know, we understand that there's always a desire to do more. I believe that we have done more outreach on this effort than just about any effort that I've seen, and we continue to engage in moving forward in that fashion. So I think that part of what we're seeing is a result of that outreach. We're seeing a lot more people becoming aware and getting engaged. What we hope is that those people will look at our website, look at the data. The thing that I would also want to point out that people I don't think fully appreciate is that as the board has moved this hearing date to May, we continue to evaluate the rule itself. We continue to look at various aspects of the cost concerns, of the implementation, of incentive funding. And we are continuing to work on the rule and will continue to do so. And so what we're seeing today may not be what you see in May. And it's because of all of this input. And as I recall, the desire for the outreach was to get input, to get a better rule that we can all adopt and move forward. And that's exactly what we're doing. I hope that answers the question, Mayor, Vice Chair.
One of the comments and concerns, of course, as presented today, was potential cost information. I know the staff is working hard on trying to come up with better cost estimates of what this rule will do. Is any of that information available on the website?
So that's a really good question. Dr. Reese and myself were actually looking at that last night, and we are going to revise the one-pager that we have. We have developed a table that shows comparable costs for replacement and what that looks like. So we'll be putting that on the one-page backgrounder that we have. And what we really want to do is put also a QR code on that so that as people see this data and access the QR code, it'll direct them to our website, where the website will have the most current information. And so we recognize that as we get additional data, the numbers might change. And so we have been reluctant to put something static on a printed document. But if we use the QR code and go to the website, we can keep it constantly updated. I think that will help. So definitely trying to get more information on the costing side. And I think what I'm hearing is we probably need to be clear in terms of who is not impacted. 1111, 1121, I'm going to look at my team, does not impact school districts.
That's correct.
Does not impact school districts. So I want to be very clear about that.
We need to make sure that information, who's affected and who's not affected, might be useful. The cost information, I think, will be very helpful for people who are looking to be able to comment on this rule.
Absolutely.
comments? Go ahead.
Mr. Chair, Wayne, as you're doing the cost comparison, probably the equipment, the gas versus the electric, can you also just give it like a range? I know it's dynamic and it's different from region to region, but the installation cost for a contractor, I know a contractor in a greater LA area may be different than way out in San Bernardino, than out in the Riverside. Orange County may be totally different, but something like that, just so as apples and apples and oranges, that would help. I get a lot of questions with that from local mayors in my cog.
I appreciate that.
Any other comments from committee? Go ahead.
One more thing. Thank you, Wayne. Heard a lot of things about costs and the programs we have to supplement those expenses going out and the grants. Even if we doubled it, if we had all the money, can you come back at a future meeting and say, if everybody over the next 20 years that's affected by this had to change it out, we're gonna have to pick a number. If it's 20,000 for a single family, 400,000 for multi-units between this size, whatever those numbers are that you come up with versus the grants that we anticipate over that same time period. I think the few that get started are going to be maybe compensated, maybe break even, but I don't think we have enough funds to do it all, definitely. And so I want to kind of see what percentage that is. And we're talking 3%, 10%, 50% over the lifetime of this rule.
Thank you. That's something that we're looking at right now.
Very
And at
good.
the overall impact through adoption and the cost units pricing as those units become exactly. And as I have said earlier, the heat pumps are outselling gas furnaces now throughout the United States. And people don't seem to hear that part, but that's a fact. That's a data point. We can provide numerous backup information for that.
I hear that too, but and through the chair, I'm sorry. Nationally is different because what we pay here in Southern California for electricity is quite a bit different than most other states too. And so I'd like to see those numbers for California and new builds versus older homes, how much are being, I think those are apples and oranges there too. Thank you.
Thank you.
Well, and I think the current situation where the Edison is cutting off power is really emphasizing to people some of the problems that could come from this kind of rule. So that's generating a lot of interest. So any other comments or questions from our committee? Seeing none, then we will adjourn this meeting until our next one in February 21st at 10:30 a.m. Thank you all, and
Thank you.
weekend.